Today's case was recommended by a subscriber. You know who you are, and thank you very much for a suggestion. Now, this is a disclaimer. This case involves sexual assault and multiple disappearances, one of which is a baby. Marvin Gabrion raped his victim Racheal, and days before he was to stand trial for the sexual assault, Racheal went missing, along with her 11-month-old daughter, who is still missing to this day. My name is Sean. I try to post true crime weekly. If you enjoy, please subscribe. Now enjoy this week's episode on Morning Crime Time. Today's case brings us to Cedar Springs in the state of Michigan. Known as the Red Flannel Town, the city is home of the famed red flannel used by hunters, as well as the fat man himself, Santa Claus. It holds the Red Flannel Festival, which is attended by thousands each year, located just 20 minutes north of downtown Grand Rapids. Racheal Timmerman. She was born on April 6, 1978 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Her parents separated, and Racheal, her brother and sister, they all had to fend for themselves from an early age as their mother was neglecting them. She didn't provide for them like a mother should. They often went without proper food or clothing. School was not a priority for the kids, as they often stayed at home from school, and Racheal would usually stay at home due to the fact she had no money for lunch or clean clothes, unlike all her peers in school would have. As she, along with her siblings, had the option, it was just easier for them to stay at home. In her teenage years, she would like to party instead of going to school, which would soon catch up to her. On June 15th, 1996, at the age of 18, she gave birth to a baby girl who she named Shannon. She then made the decision to have a better life for her child, and she gave up drink and drugs. She was a good mother and always put her child first, unlike her own mother. On the day of August 7th, 1996, Racheal was very excited. She asked her brother and sister to babysit Shannon. She was going out with a very close family friend named Wayne Davis and a classmate of Racheal's whose name is Mikey Gabrion. They were accompanied by Mikey's uncle Marvin Gabrion, the only one of the three who Racheal didn't know. At some point during the night, while Marvin was driving, he pulled the car over on a back road and he ordered his nephew Mike and Wayne out of the car, but he made Racheal stay inside. The men, both scared of Marvin, done as he asked. He then drove off to a remote location where he beat and raped Racheal repeatedly. He then drove her back to the trailer she lived in with her mother and sister. At this point, Racheal's sister Sarah was in the house, and she said that Racheal came in all bloody and a mess. Marvin was pounding down their trailer door while saying, "You're going to pay for this." The two girls grabbed a hammer and waited for Marvin to go away from the door. It is not known what Racheal said to Marvin, leading him to pound on the door. Racheal, after some time, told her sister what had happened. She said she had been raped by Marvin, and that he told her not to tell anyone or he would kill her and her daughter Shannon. Sarah then rang her brother and social worker, all of whom would be the three people Racheal trusted most. After some convincing from her social worker, sister and brother, Racheal contacted the Newaygo County Sheriff's Department the very next day, and she reported the rape and gave them Marvin Gabrion's name. So when the Sheriff's Department contacted Marvin to conduct an investigation into these allegations, they reached him by phone, and he said he would come in and give his side of the story. But he didn't end up coming in. He faxed in a statement to the Newaygo Sheriff's Department, and in this statement he said they went to play a game of cards that night, and during the ride home Racheal offered to give him oral sex. Marvin said he then let Wayne and Mikey out of the car so he could be alone with Racheal. Marvin tried to flip the whole story around. He said it was a consensual encounter between him and Racheal. Luckily, Racheal went to the hospital after the incident and they performed a rape kit on her. They also found tearing and bleeding and that she had a lot of bruising on her body. They would also discover she had human teeth marks on her nose. So now the police could bring Marvin to trial for this. But Racheal would have to wait 5 months for that to happen. She moved home from her mother's trailer and she moved to her father's. She felt more safe here. And she got a job in a fast food restaurant while trying to care for her daughter and move on from this horrific ordeal. On January 20th, 1997, Marvin was arrested, and on the warrant it had a list of witnesses, and obviously Racheal was one of them, and she would be standing trial against Marvin. On February the 3rd, Marvin was then released on bail. His bail was posted by Wayne Davis, who was supposed to be a very close friend of Racheal, and he was originally the one that had asked Racheal to go out. I'm thinking Wayne, he was scared of Marvin, and Marvin manipulated him to post his bail. Otherwise, why would you post bail for someone who'd done that to your very close friend? I don't know, I just found the relationship very strange. After hearing about Marvin's release, Racheal went into a relapse and began taking drugs again. And she was caught in possession and would spend some time in jail because of that. Shortly after Marvin was released, Wayne Davis was scheduled to appear in court after he was caught driving under the influence. He expected to spend some time in prison because it wasn't his first time. He asked his friend, a woman named Darlene Lazo, to drive him to court that day. He mentioned to her that he wanted to stop off to get some puzzles, a book and maybe some cigarettes to get him through. He was likely going to spend 90 days in county jail. On the morning of the hearing, Lazo went to pick up her friend Wayne. She knocked on the door and called him, but with no response. 2 days later, she went back to find a note on the door that was signed by Wayne. It said he went to California because he was scared to serve time in jail, although Lazo knew something was up. As Wayne expressed to her days ago, he was in peace with the fact he had to spend time in jail. She then forced her way into the house, and she seen some stuff left behind that he would never have left there. But no sign of Wayne Davis. He just disappeared. The disappearance of Wayne was not good for the prosecutors, as he was to be a really important witness for their trial. A date for the trial was finally set in stone for June 5th, 1997. Approaching the trial, Racheal expressed her fear to her friends and family. She was sure Marvin was going to kill her, especially after the suspicious disappearance of Wayne Davis. On 2 separate occasions, she called the sheriff's station and expressed her fear to them, as she had seen Marvin following her both times. He was stalking her, but the county sheriff couldn't do anything. At this point, Racheal had been receiving phone calls from a guy named John Weeks. He said he got her phone number from someone she knew at her job in the fast food restaurant. They talked every night over the phone, and Racheal began really liking him. On the days leading up to the trial, Racheal told John she was getting really nervous, and John suggested they go out and meet to get some fresh air and to take her mind off the trial. Racheal wanted to go, but she couldn't get anyone to babysit Shannon. So John said bring her along for the date, as he was excited to meet her. So along they went on their date. Racheal never returned home from the date with John Weeks, and the next day her dad received a letter. The letter said she apologised for leaving without saying goodbye, but she chose to run off and get married. This is odd. She left without saying goodbye, and she had run away with a man she'd just met. And her father was very impulsive, so he thought what Racheal had wrote in the letter could be a possibility. The trial was now due to take place, but the main witness, victim Racheal, had run away. The judge postponed the trial as they tried to find her. Around this time, the judge and prosecutors got a letter, and it was signed by Racheal. The letter said that Marvin Gabrion didn't rape her. She explained that she had been mad, that he didn't want to have sex with her, and she wanted to teach him a lesson. She went on to ask if all the charges could be dropped against him. There's something not right here. The letters, the disappearances of witnesses. It was transparent that Marvin had something to do with this. Detectives noticed that both letters sent from Racheal to her dad and to the courthouse were stamped from Arkansas. The prosecutors couldn't go on trial without Racheal. They couldn't find her anywhere, so they were forced to drop the charges against Marvin Gabrion. 1 week later, Racheal's family received another letter. In the letter, Racheal explained the man she ran away with was named Dilbert. Another red flag here, as the man she originally went on a date with was named John Weeks. She went on to say this man had got a job in Arkansas and she was considering living there forever. Racheal's family, however, were beginning to cop on. They were seeing through the letters and would begin to question everything. Just 1 month later, a body had been found. It was found by a father and a son. They were both fishing on Oxford Lake in Newaygo County. They discovered the body was Racheal Timmerman. She was handcuffed with her hands behind her back and thrown into the water alive, while the cement blocks kept her down and she drowned. What an absolute horrific death. Right, so now we have the body of Racheal, but where is her daughter Shannon? This is when the FBI were called in. They checked the surrounding areas around the lake and in it for Shannon, but they found nothing. The FBI were now bringing people in for questioning. They questioned her ex-boyfriend Rick. He was also Shannon's dad, but he was quickly let go as he was living in Florida and he had an alibi. The next suspect on the FBI's list was Marvin Gabrion. He had threatened the life of Racheal and her daughter Shannon previously. They tracked down Gabrion. He was found to be laying low at a house in the Amish community. In the yard of this house, they found cement blocks spray painted in red. They couldn't get into his house as there was no answer. So the FBI then went to talk to the neighbours about Gabrion. They said they hadn't seen him for weeks. They went on to say Gabrion became good friends with a handyman in the area. He used to always call to Gabrion's house, but now he hasn't been seen for weeks. The neighbours were asked for the name of this handyman, and the neighbour said his name was John Weeks. Remember, John Weeks was the boyfriend that Racheal went out with on a date before she went missing. It's all starting to come together now. John Weeks had a girlfriend, and when the FBI went to her questioning this, she said he had not been seen for 2 weeks. When the FBI showed her a picture of Gabrion, she said that was the man that John was working for and had become good friends with in a really short amount of time. She didn't know him as Marvin though. She knew him as Lance Gabrion. The reason she didn't report her boyfriend John Weeks missing was because himself and Gabrion were to go to Texas on a weed run, and she didn't want to report this to the police and decided to wait it out. She said she didn't like Gabrion, or the way her boyfriend acted like a puppy around him, always trying to make him happy. She said one time she caught her boyfriend John on the phone with a girl named Racheal. When she confronted him, he said he wasn't cheating, and he was just doing a favour for Gabrion. So now we have the connection with John Weeks and Racheal. Obviously, Gabrion asked John to try seduce Racheal and to draw her out. When the cinder blocks around Gabrion's yard were tested, they matched the very same ones used to hold Racheal's body down in the lake. This got the FBI the warrant for Gabrion's arrest. Although he was still missing, they went back to his house. When they went, they found Gabrion's family collecting all of his things and putting them into the back of a pickup truck. It looked like they were trying to get rid of evidence from whatever happened in the house. The FBI made them put all the stuff they had taken out back to where they found it. The FBI then went into the premises to conduct a search warrant. While they were searching, they would find some evidence. They would find padlocks which would match the ones used to chain Racheal to the cinder blocks. They would also find a book titled The Perfect Victim, The Undertaker's Guide to Murder. This is a story of a sexual predator who kidnapped a woman and held her captive. They knew now for sure that Gabrion committed the murder of Racheal and potentially 2 other men, John Weeks and Wayne Davis, who both went missing and had connections to Marvin. And they still don't know what happened to 11-month-old Shannon. The FBI found out Marvin was not legally renting the house he was staying in. The person who owned the house was a man named Robert Allen. When the FBI contacted Robert's family looking for him, they said Robert had been missing since 1995, but they thought he was somewhere as his social security checks were still being cashed. So now at this point, Marvin Gabrion is connected to 1 murder and 4 missing persons. So where is Marvin Gabrion? Marvin eluded the FBI for 3 months, until someone he worked with gave an anonymous tip. The man was running a scam in partnership with Gabrion. He said he would send money to him to a P.O. box in upstate New York, and every other Tuesday he would send it to Marvin and Marvin would collect it. The next time Marvin was due to collect the money was on October 14th, 1997. The FBI, they went and staked out the post office. And just past 11 a.m, Marvin Gabrion approached the post office. They waited for him to collect the cash and they moved in for the arrest. He tried to make a run for it, but they surrounded him and took him into custody. When in jail, he would write taunting letters to Racheal's family. In one of these letters addressed to Racheal's mom, he said it was her fault Racheal was thrown into the lake, and that there were air bubbles coming from the lake when Racheal was struggling, and she would have to live with the fact that she caused this. While Gabrion was locked up in 2001, his fellow inmates were harassing him about what he had done to Racheal and Shannon, and he confessed he threw Shannon into the lake as he didn't know what to do. So now, going off the back of this information, the FBI went back to the lake and researched it, but they didn't find anything. Moving on to March 2002, Marvin Gabrion stood trial for the murder of Racheal. During this trial, the life of Marvin began to unfold. He had committed horrific crimes before Racheal. In 1996, he sexually assaulted the wife of one of his friends. Months later, he tried to get into bed with his sister-in-law's niece, but she told him to get out or she would scream. The next morning, her dog went missing. Also in 1996, Gabrion rented a room in a 7-bedroom house in Michigan. The landlord testified to the fact that several complaints came in about Gabrion. He was said to have been peeping on women and assaulting women. The landlord then caught Marvin looking through a window at a 12-year-old girl. When the landlord approached him to tell him he had to leave, he said he wouldn't, and the landlord's wife called the cops. This led to Marvin threatening the 2 of them with a knife. Marvin has got away with this unscathed. He has been manipulating people for all his life, assaulting people and getting away with it constantly. He is nothing short of a monster. With the trial commencing, the prosecutors were looking to seek the death penalty as Racheal's body was found on federal land. Her body was found within the Manistee National Forest. So it wasn't Michigan versus Marvin Gabrion. It was the United States versus Marvin Gabrion. So because it was on federal land and not Michigan, they could seek the death penalty. If the body was not found within the national forest, this wouldn't be the case, as Michigan abolished the death penalty in 1937. The jury found Marvin Gabrion guilty. He was the first person ever to be given the death penalty in a state that doesn't allow it. Marvin Gabrion tried multiple appeals, which were overturned, and he now currently sits in death row. So that's it from this horrific story. I'd like to thank the subscriber again for recommending this to me. Shannon has still never been found, along with all the other suspected victims. I'm curious to see what his last words will be. I really hope we get some justice for all the victims, especially Shannon. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please drop us a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. If you have any cases you'd like me to cover, please drop me an email with the case suggestion. Thank you for watching the video. Until next time, I'll see you later.